High five before we go. Welcome to the Better Everyday podcast. Today we talk about brand strategy, what it is, what it isn't, and why it matters. And we're here with our head of creative, John Wallace, one of my favorite people in the business. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. That was quite the intro.
Quite the intro. You know, matching my energy. You're going to better match it now that we go ahead. I know you this topic, it's hot and you like it, you love it, and there's a lot that we can talk about. So, every business have a brand. Every business do marketing, but do they have a brand strategy, or do you think they know what it is? So let's start from the definition of brand strategy. What is brand strategy if you have to explain it in plain English?
Yeah. The easiest way to explain it for me is it's a deliberate positioning of your brand in the category. So I don't really want to try and make up my own definition. So I'd rather rely on someone like Mark Ritzen's, who defines brand strategy as a 3-step process of diagnosis, strategy, and tactics, which is to say, understand the category you're in, devise a strategy to be present, successful, occupy a distinct position, and then go out and do that, really.
And do you think many businesses in the market have a brand strategy, or they just create a brand and sort of get along with it and see what happens?
I think brand strategy isn't necessarily a binary thing. It's not black or white, is or isn't. I think lots of businesses have different degrees of brand strategy. But I think maybe a better question is, do all businesses have a brand position? And that's yes. You know, they all have a position in the market. Brand strategy is the act of determining deliberately where you want that position to be, which is what most businesses don't do. They seem to just be assigned a position by the market. They fall into a place in the category rather than deliberately identifying the opportunity and going after it.
So you're saying that they just happen to be there, but they don't really choosing to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
And they just sort of act following whatever that segment is doing rather than going the right segment and have a strategy to attack that.
Yeah, definitely. And making decisions that do influence their brand strategy, but without really thinking about the bigger picture. So they might say, this particular segment seems to be the most valuable for us, so we will continue to go after it, and we will shape our product offering or service around that segment and their preferences, which is by nature influencing their brand strategy and the position they occupy in the category. But what they're not doing is stepping back and going, is that segment the most profitable, the most viable, the best segment for us to go after?
Yeah. And do you think a lot of brands think that they have a brand strategy, but they actually don't? And how do you uncover the fact that they don't have it? How do we get that into that tough conversation where they say, nah, I have a brand strategy.
Yeah.
But then you look into it and actually don't. And, you know, there's awkward conversation of telling them, no, mate, you don't have one.
Yeah. So that's a 2-part pickle where often you say to someone, have you got a brand strategy? They go, yeah, absolutely. Our color is blue and here's the logo.
Oh.
And you're like, okay, cool. So that's not a brand strategy.
That tell people what that is.
Yeah. So that's a brand identity.
Okay.
And often it's not a particularly comprehensive one, which is fine. That's not strictly a problem, but you often do see those two things pop up at the same time. People think strategy is look, and then the look is not very deep, which is fine. But then the other part you see is people say they have a brand strategy, and they do in a sense, but it tends to be just a very waffly PDF full of we are in business to serve people that have aspirations to go to the moon, or, you know, we really love dogs, and all these things are great, but then it's not a brand strategy. You know what I mean?
What do you see we really love dogs?
I don't know. It's just popped into my head. You know, we love dogs. We don't like cats. That's our brand strategy. And like, yeah, sort of. But I think you figure it out when you start asking why. Why are you going after those people? You know, why do you think this is a good decision? Why do you think spending money on these channels and platforms and tactics is a good idea?
So what are the elements that people should have in their brand strategy? Like the core elements of a brand strategy, of a good brand strategy. What should they be?
The first most important element for me is a good picture of the category, a good understanding of the battle we are fighting. You know, who is it that is in this category? What do those people do? How do they enter the category? So category entry points. What triggers them to buy, and what are they looking for? What are table stakes versus genuine points of differentiation and opportunities to be distinct? So that for me is probably the most overlooked And the most important part of it is understanding. People skip that. And you see it in brand strategies that go straight to purpose or vision or something like that.
Yeah, but playing the client, like not the average client, but there might be a client saying, "Oh, so what do I need to do? A workshop isn't just something that agencies are doing just to overcomplicate what brand is and just charge and make money out of it because I don't know, you're just overcomplicating things."
Yeah, couple different things in there. So first of all, I think brand workshops are important, but clients might not, and that's not to say they're wrong. You know what I mean? So the one thing that's worth touching on first is that brand strategy is not always equally important. If you're a small brand, you don't need a strategy as much as you just need penetration. You just need people to know about you. You need to earn mental availability. Whether it's good, bad, correct, wrong, doesn't matter. You just need to be known. And that's how you achieve those first few initial stages of growth, right? So for that business, if you've only got $5,000, maybe you should just spend it on ads. Don't spend it on the strategy. But for bigger brands, and answering the question of do they need a strategy or why should they spend money on it? And is it just an agency faff to make money? Again, leaning on words of people smarter and wiser than me, April Dunford, who's a positioning, I don't want to say guru because it feels like a slanderous word in our current climate, but she's a positioning expert and does positioning for big businesses and things like that. She's the pink excavator brand in America. Anyway, she said, if you don't think you need positioning, which is what she sells, you're right, you don't. And I kind of have the same attitude towards brand strategy. If you don't think you need it, you probably don't. Great, carry on. I think the biggest thing that tells us that somebody needs it is if they have problems and they've tried to fix it with just more ad spend, more content, more activation, and it's not working. Or they're getting leads and getting clients, but they're the wrong sort of clients. You know what I mean? Like if they're not growing in the right ways, or potentially things like conversion rate is really poor on both ads and owned platforms like the website and things like that.
Wouldn't people think that those are symptoms of a problem with their marketing strategy? And do we need, for information's sake, for the audience, define marketing and define brand?
Sure. We have this conversation a lot because I think for a long time they've been used interchangeably. The idea of a brand strategy versus a marketing strategy. In my opinion, a marketing strategy is the expression of a brand strategy. So the brand strategy is the who are we targeting, what are we offering them, how are we standing out from our competitors and that sort of thing. And the marketing strategy is how do we get that message to those people in the right places at the right time. So kind of completely different, in my opinion. Now, some people will disagree with that. Whether they're right or I'm right, I don't know. I'm not here to be the judge of that. But I think a marketing strategy is more tangible and tactical than a brand strategy, which kind of determines the overall direction, whereas a marketing strategy is much more about achieving those goals.
And a marketing strategy might change more often. A brand strategy is probably not meant to be changed once every 6 months or once a year. That's probably something that the core of it will probably stay for a long time or never change sometimes.
Yeah.
You have some example of good brands that have a good brand strategy in your opinion, like
Apple. Apple is a tremendous brand. Most people can articulate what that brand is. Simple, creative, human. I think that's a really strong brand strategy. They make products that look great for people. They've kind of blended the lines between tech and status or luxury or whatever it might look like.
I always refer to Nike just because of Nike. Just because I absolutely love the brand. And we make so many examples in the newsletters or blogs and podcasts. You and I have read that tracksuit case study about Nike moving to performance and completely destroying their brand department, thinking that I don't need it. The result was losing 8 million customers. Is that an example that people should look at as well?
That one's really interesting because I would almost say that one is an example of a marketing strategy gone wrong. You know what I mean? I don't think their brand strategy changed too much, but the way they marketed it definitely did. You know what I mean? But I guess they also moved a little bit more towards product and away from human story and stuff like that.
Well, wasn't Nike a brand that always sided with was always involved in social issues, always sided with the weak part of the society, always sided with the always did the right thing
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
at
sure.
cost of having a short-term loss for a long-term win. That was their brand, kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is that changing the nature of the brand uh, to implement a marketing strategy that is performance driven?
Yeah. I think the strategy definitely like contradicted the ethos of the brand, but I don't think they changed the brand strategy. It is a really good case study though as to the long and the short of it and why over-indexing on activation relative to brand is clearly a really bad idea.
Well, but then this probably connects to the fact that when you do a marketing strategy, you gotta refer to what your brand strategy is because they are interconnected whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if your brand strategy says something and your marketing strategy do the opposite of what the brand strategy is saying,
Yeah, that's true.
would you see problems
Absolutely.
downstream? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what happened there, right?
Yeah.
Someone ignored it and said, you know what, just
It was the CEO, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously the many reasons behind it. As a CEO, is probably thinking of numbers, or he has targets, there's investors, there's shareholders. There's a lot of there's a lot of factors that might influence, decision that a CEO makes. I don't think a CEO should decide anything about brand and marketing, to be honest. Should
Yeah.
talk to their respective CMOs and brand office if they have them, and try to plan accordingly based on the targets rather than steer a marketing strategy. But this is a very common problem, right? Like when a smaller business have a CEO or a director that they just do everything, but that's probably when things start falling apart, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what actually breaks when you skip the strategy part. So we said that for very small businesses, brand strategy might not be the right thing to do. But let's say a business is mature enough to have a brand strategy and a marketing strategy, and they skip the strategy part in favor of just performance or implementation of short-term wins. What actually breaks?
What breaks? I think it's more a case of what doesn't. You know what I mean? Like we touched on at the start, there is definitely something to be said around if you are a small business, then just getting eyeballs, driving penetration in your category, like those should probably be your priorities. But that doesn't mean you have to skip brand strategy or marketing strategy. It just means you should probably spend less time and money on that. I think what it is people often skip parts of strategy and then tick off strategy as done. Like they don't bother to really understand the category or do good segmentation. But also what you often see is people don't do the fundamentals of strategy, which is make decisions. So they go, okay, we have all of these different buyer personas or target segments or whatever people call them. We're just going to go after everyone all the time, all at once. And then they're surprised when it doesn't work because you've built a brand for everybody, which is therefore for nobody.
When brands are trying to target everybody, they're actually targeting nobody.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Say that. And the same way they're trying to say everything, they actually mean nothing with it because it's not defined, right?
Yeah.
So how does the brand strategy help them in that specific process?
I think,
I know how hard it is to make people understand that you can't target everyone because everyone is not your client, and just say no to this cohort of people because they're not your clients. Maybe one of them will buy out of 1 million. I don't know. That doesn't mean they're your clients.
Yeah. I think the first thing is like targeting doesn't strictly mean saying no to everybody that isn't that target segment. It means going after a particular one. And if you get some halo effect buying from other segments, it's great. It doesn't mean we have to say no to them strictly. It just means we're saying no to them from the perspective of targeting and strategy and spending money to acquire those customers. So if you're for everybody, you're for nobody, and how brand strategy solves for this. The big thing is that it's a process where we just take the time to go through things in the correct order. What you see a lot of people do is they'll skip good diagnosis, which is what we just talked about, and go straight to strategy. And they'll make a shitload of assumptions. They'll go, we think people care about this. And I've talked about this before, but how do you know if you haven't asked people or looked at feedback or asked people how they buy or done proper qualitative brand research? Yeah, like you don't know. You have no idea. If anything, you have worse than no idea because you think you know, but you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it remind me of met some people sometimes like, oh, I'm building this business because my friends told me that I'm good at this. I should open a business, and then you open a business and you only sell to your mates or
Yeah.
your family. They're probably doing you a favor.
They're sympathy purchases
Exactly,
anyway. Yeah.
and I don't think you should base yourself on those decisions. So
No.
how do we? And again, I think it's very important, like the market research part
Mm.
and things. And people think, oh, I can just use AI for it. I don't think that's the right method sometimes.
No.
And, what you've done for other clients, you know, the loyalist interviews, understanding who your best customers are and why, what are their motivation that make them, you know, use you
Yeah.
for your services or buy your products, and what are some of the, you know, things that people can do to understand those
Yeah.
their customers? Can they do surveys? What else can they do?
Yeah. First, we need to understand customers, but generally you also want to start with an established brand. Doing brand strategy for a startup brand is
Hard.
yeah, it's really hard. And the best way to do it is just to find a problem and solve it. And if other people have that problem, they'll ask you to solve it for them too. You know what I mean? That's kind of all I have to say on like starting a business or starting a brand. But when it comes to understanding your category as an existing brand, where we want to start is generally heritage research. So look at the brand in its early days. Those were the most critical days, and they have a lot to tell us about why the brand is here. You know, who is it? Who does it serve? Who were the original customers and why did they buy? And we can glean a lot from looking at things like early collateral, early websites. You know, Wayback Machine is a great resource. I've used that for the Dilate brand a lot. Even talking to some really old customers, people that maybe don't fit our current ideal customer profile or aren't actually within our current target segment. Then founder interviews are a really good one. It's undeniable that founders impart a lot of their personality on the brands that they found. You can't escape that. That is just the way the world works.
It's just their baby, right?
Exactly. So you can kind of skip by just talking to that founder and interviewing them and understanding who they are and their personal values and what they care about and what sort of people they wanted to help and serve when they set out. When it comes to actually talking to customers, the first thing to remember is that customers are liars, or people are liars, rather, not out of malice, but just by nature. If you ask somebody, why did you buy those shoes? The correct answer in 99% of cases is, I wanted them. You know what I mean? I thought they looked good, or I like the brand, or whatever. But they'll say, oh, it was just a really good deal. They're on sale. You know, or, oh, I've got a trip coming up and I really needed a new pair of waterproof Blundstones. And it's like, you've got fucking 4. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
So when the real way to understand customers is through surveys and customer research, but you have to go about it in a particular way. So that's why you need to split qual and quant research. So qualitative research literally looks like those loyalist interviews we talked about. And Mark Ritson does a lot of work in teaching and training people how to do this effectively. And the big thing that we do is just look for brand associations. That's all we're trying to understand at this point. Just a list of 10 things that people associate with our brand, positive and negative. And generally 20 loyalist interviews is enough. You'll saturate your data and you'll start to just see the same things coming up again and again and again. Trim it down to 10, make sure they're all real and tangible things. There aren't any duplicates or double ups, and you haven't let your own inherent bias affect that list of associations. And then you go and measure that list through quantitative survey using platforms like Askable or whatever that might be, panel testing. And in that, there's some good ways to do it as well, essentially using Likert scales with questions that sound something like, how much do you agree with the following statement? Dilate is a relationships-driven business. 1 to 5. You know what I mean? Strongly disagree to strongly agree. And you take all of those data points relative to all of your associations, and then you measure that against how that customer has responded to a set of questions on their current preference. So of the following marketing agencies, which ones are you aware of? Which ones have you spoken to in the way of contacting their discovery team? Which ones have you requested a proposal from or a quote? And if you had to pick one today, which one would you go with? You know what I mean? So you can take those two seemingly separate sets of responses and then look at the correlation coefficients between the degree to which people associate certain associations with your brand and then how strongly they prefer you over your competitors. So rather than ask somebody, why did you pick Dilate? And they go, oh, Dilate had the best deal, or Dilate was this, or Dilate was that. We don't ask them that. We ask them what they think about Dilate separate to whether or not they prefer dilate. And then from that, you essentially end up with either good data or bad data. If it's bad and nothing seems to match up and make any sense, well, then maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and
fix the brand.
Yeah, find some new associations. But then even if you do find strong associations, we probably still need to do work on the brand, because they're going to tell us things like, we thought people pick dilate because of real human relationships, but actually they pick dilate because everybody really fucking likes green. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the big thing about...
We did have a case with a client of ours, which I'm not going to mention here, but they might think they were choosing us because, I don't know, let's say, I put it Australian made and good quality products. And then the reason was like, no, you just don't sell. You're always on sale. That's what we'll buy from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is kind of like a punch in the gut.
Yeah. So
it's
that's
going from premium to
commoditized.
Yeah.
So that's a completely
happen
different
often in some brand strategies. When you do this into you do the research and being the founder of the business and probably so convinced about we get convinced about something, and like, oh yeah, that's what people buy from me, and then like, no, actually,
that's a completely different problem.
I know
that's
again,
a lack of brand,
but that's where
equity.
Probably.
But yeah,
you go back to a drawing board and ask,
do
you want to be chosen because of those association? And that's the thing. It's not something that happens overnight. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Is that correct? So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it goes both ways. You need people to associate your brand with associations that you've chosen, but then also by advertising and communicating to the market these associations, it can influence the market to more highly prioritize those things, which is why if you look at, I can't remember, I think it was published by Kantar, but it was a collaboration study where they looked at the biggest drivers of advertising profitability. And by far and away, the biggest driver was brand size. So the bigger you are, the more effective your ads are. Yeah. And that's just the nature of the industry and advertising.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. But the second biggest driver of profitability was the quality of your creative. And that was quite far away from the third. You know what I mean? So
that is an interesting one, and we can dig into it. But the quality of the creative is something actually seen recently. I listened to recently in a podcast how people don't give importance of the quality of the creative. They just think you do a creative and it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I think that the quality of it, the thought behind it, the output of the creative team, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's you can quantify creative quality as well, and I think most people either don't look at how, or don't ask how they can quantify it, or maybe aren't fussed about it. But what it often comes down to is the degree to which it elicits an emotional response. And as long as you can get an emotional response from someone and the brand is fluent, which is to say it looks and sounds like you, that's really good creative, which simplifies it for us, I think. When the objective is no longer cater to these 15 different CRO psychology, persuasion triggers, blah, 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 wank, wank, wank. It's instead make something that makes somebody feel something while looking and sounding like us.
Yeah, 25% red ribbon discount.
Yeah, brilliant. That's
limited stock. Yeah, that.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Use that. Anyway,
yeah,
John, I will listen to you all day if it was for me, honestly. But can we measure the effectiveness of a good brand strategy from a CEO point of view or a CFO point of view? How do we measure that? Which is the bar of there's always been there, there's always going to be there. Like, cut your budget. No, you need to invest in brand. Well, how do we measure that, in your opinion?
It's funny you ask that, because brand equity is called that because it goes on a balance sheet.
Shit.
You know what I mean? Like, there are companies that can quite literally measure how valuable your brand is to the business that owns it. So that's one way to answer it. Good brand strategy make brand number go up. bad brand strategy make brand number go down? You know, so from a CFO perspective, you can literally look at how valuable is the brand to the business and measure that.
Do you have some examples of brands that are extreme, like for the audience there?
Any brand, if I say name a carbonated drink brand, who do you say?
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, exactly. So 99% of people, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Name an energy drink brand.
Red Bull.
Yeah, there you go. 99%, right? Name a chocolate brand.
I'm European, so I would
Yes.
say Milka, but yeah, I would say Kinder because
Yeah,
that's what
there's
it
there's
is.
lots. There's a
It's
few.
probably Cadbury, but
Yeah. Cadbury, Lindt. Yeah, there's lots of different ones.
Yeah.
But these sort of things are, pretty good examples of brand strength, but also an effective brand. So one of the big measures for is your brand effective and is your brand strategy working is unaided recall. So basically, if you prompt someone with a category, which brands come to mind? So aided recall is the measurement of that. Do you come to mind? How often do you come to mind? If you take a survey of 10,000 people and all of them say your brand unprompted, that's a pretty strong brand. You know what I mean? Like if you go home tonight and you fancy watching a TV show through a streaming video on demand service,
I've probably got Netflix.
you probably go Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say that category is starting to get quite competitive and saturated, but I think most people would say Netflix when prompted.
Do you think most of these companies, especially the one in the stock market, and we can see this like they've been talking about AI bubble, tech bubble, or all these tech companies, it's literally how good their brand is. That's why they're valued so much.
I think so,
Overvalued.
Yeah, I think so.
Because even for startups, really, there was this, years ago, everyone was opening startups and stuff, and investors, all it was literally brand and people connected to your brand. So our board is met these people, which are from or former Apple, and it's literally brand because there was nothing beside a business plan and some ideas in there. So do you think that's what brand strategy is as well?
It is. I think the weight that people have in relation to brands as individuals is a big part there as well. You know what I mean? There are so many brands that have succeeded because of the founder. I'd say Tesla, SpaceX, and all those kind of things probably wouldn't have been as successful without Elon Musk. And I'm not saying he's a beloved person, but he is very hard to miss. He's present.
He's polarizing too.
Yeah. Polarizing for sure. Elicits an emotional response.
I mean, you did mention Apple before, and I think Steve Jobs is what Apple became today. Is Steve Jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
Steve Jobs' vision for it. Even Dali too.
Yeah.
Even body's footprint is everything we do, and how the business evolved. It's body in there. Of course, there's a lot of Toms and a lot of me, you, and Mark, but you could see the founder really set the vision, and
Totally.
and again, when we say the brand doesn't change much, that has evolved quite a lot.
It has, yeah.
But I think the real human relationship association has always been there. Good to work for. Good people and
committed, driven. Yeah, exactly.
So those things are still there. Those values are still there. Do you think, because we were mentioning all these big brands and from Netflix, Cadbury, and I don't want to scare the audience here, but like, is brand strategy a luxury for bigger brands, or is something that everyone can do?
It's not a luxury, but it isn't as necessary for every business at every life stage. Like that is a concession I'm more than prepared to make. If you're a brand new startup business and you're doing it on a very tight budget, bootstrapped, talking about brand growth and mental availability is probably the wrong conversation. You should probably be calling local markets and things like that and getting your product out there, or getting in front of people, picking up the phone, doing door knocking, dropping flyers, whatever that looks like. And I think it's a fairly linear scale that as the business grows, brand gets more and more important. You reach a point where not doing it is going to cost you more than doing it. And I think that's where it becomes a really obvious choice. I think that's a lot sooner than a lot of people think. You're right, though, that talking about big brands tends to scare people. Because when I was first getting into advertising and marketing and brand management, my big questions were always, this is great, but the business that I'm working on isn't Coca-Cola. It isn't Apple. You know what I mean? I don't even know if I have a brand budget, never mind a big one. I'm not going to impact the market in a meaningful way because I have $12 in my lunch break to make it happen. So I think for a business in that sort of a stage, brand is more, its impact is less felt in how strongly you grow in your category in terms of market share and against your competitors. And it's more strongly felt in the quality of the lead you attract, how easy it is to close those leads, and the price that you can charge. So price elasticity and things like that.
I like that because for me, I mean, I dialed it when I restarted in 2022, being in the discovery seat, you could feel the heavy work that the brand was doing in the background
Yeah.
of, I have seen this, or I've been to your website and I read this, or
Yeah.
I can connect with you. I even say people, I can connect with the content you're posting or the
Yeah.
guy speaking, and I really want to work with you. I think that was the brand.
Yeah.
Making doing the hard work, not the activation ad saying, "Hey, we do websites," or back in the days, yeah, all come we do paid advertising or
Yeah, exactly.
SEO and stuff. I think that the heavy lifting was done by the brand that was built the last 10 years. So, do you think, have you ever made a bad decision about a brand?
Probably fucking heaps.
Tell me the biggest fuck up you have done.
Biggest mistake.
Sorry, guys. We John. There's a lot of bombs dropping, but that's just John's.
It's the world. I think yeah. The first thing is it's really hard to tell if you've made a mistake at the scale of brand strategy we often do with clients, which is a dangerous thing to admit. But what I mentioned earlier is when you make decisions around understanding your category, you need both qualitative data to know what to measure, but then you need to measure it, which is your qualitative data. Most businesses that we tend to work with have the budget for the qualitative part and the brand strategy, but they don't have the budget for the quantitative part, which is kind of, it does make it a little bit dangerous. But this is also the thing that we went back to earlier, where businesses have a position in the category and it's either an accidental one that they've ended up in or it's one that they've chosen and gone after, right? And I think that the vast majority of businesses can improve their position by thinking about it and choosing a slightly better one. You know what I mean? So there is a lot to be gained in just doing that. I also think that most businesses, if they sat down and listened to a couple of their core customers and looked at what came up over and over and over again, it's not a big enough sample size to give you heaps and heaps of confidence. If anything, if you measured the confidence, it would probably be pretty low in terms of statistics and analysis. But if every customer is saying the same set of things, but you've built your brand on other things, maybe we need to change that strategy and reflect what the customers are saying. And that's typically how we tackle it. We go, look, what we want to do is we want to find out why customers picked you, and then we want to focus on that because it means more customers like these will pick you. We know that. Are there different customers that would be better? Yeah, but we don't know how to get to them. So let's not try and make too much up. So when you ask me about mistakes, we try and be quite conservative in the work that we do for clients, and we try and spotlight the things they're doing well already and try and make sure that the way we're positioning and presenting them is strong, differentiated, has a sound strategic base, and sets them up for growth, at which point we can then look to do qualitative research and really push further in that. So I don't think we've made any major mistakes. Now, we have made some mistakes in Dialect, okay? And that's probably the best place that we can talk to around brand strategy mistakes. Despite knowing how dangerous it is to make assumptions and change things dramatically, both of which are the sort of equally the two cardinal sins of brand strategy. One, you are not your customer, so don't pretend you know what you're talking about in terms of what they're going to prefer. And don't make dramatic course adjustments. Hold the wheel and be steady. That's how brands grow. We have a tendency to go, you know what? We've spent 12 years talking about real human relationships, but it sounds shit. Let's instead talk about something completely different. And we've had a few moments where we didn't quite roll it out. So I think the mistake was not as bad as it could have been, but we had fresh strategies that were completely unsound, total reversals of everything that's got us to where we are, and just big mistakes that were just...
Why?
I think everybody likes brands. Brands are pretty and they're interesting and they make us feel stuff. And we buy brands to to cast votes for the type of person we want to be. You know what I mean? I buy Blundstones because I'm an adventurous Australian that likes going outside. And like you do too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's why we do this stuff. I buy Apple because I'm creative and sophisticated and smart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm
Like
cool.
I'm
Yeah.
cool, man. I have a MacBook. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that we should all touch brands. And I think because it is so easy to go, our brand should be about X, or I think our mission or our vision should be Y. It's not hard to do. It's just hard to do correctly. And I think we have the classic case of a lot of people leading brands want to leave their mark on the brand and change the strategy, and they have a big idea, and most of the time it's wrong. You know, like it's never right. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's why it happens. That's where the mistakes come from. And then some of us get swept along in it, and we go, oh well, you know. So
So are you saying don't touch brand if you know what you're dealing with?
well, honestly,
It's easy to fall into the trap, especially in a marketing agency.
yeah.
I always said we should just get consultants in because you can't do anything that is related to marketing a brand because everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're all very opinionated.
Yeah.
For the right reasons and the wrong reasons too. But like, there's no malice in being opinionated.
Yeah,
but I think, especially brand, it's not something you measure in a day.
No.
It's something you measure in a decade.
Yeah.
In 5 years' time. And that choice you make today, you might not see the negative effects that they're going to lead into 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So the advice is not touch brand if you don't know what you're dealing with.
Yeah. Don't
Study a bit, get the information.
Yeah.
You really need an unbiased opinion
Mm.
on what your brand is.
It's called management. You know what I mean?
Brand management.
Brand
yes.
management. Like it's not called brand changing or brand strategizing. You know, people call it brand strategy, which you know it is, but it's just a strategy for this small part in time, and the overall picture is about managing the brand. You know, like, and you need to remember that. Like, we want to make very small course adjustments and refinements, and over time that will grow. If you leave your mark on it, you've kind of fucked up. You're not supposed to leave your mark on a brand.
No, probably not. Is that, do you think, is any brand that is absolutely overhyped at the moment? Or like,
Overhyped.
yeah.
Mm.
Or like a brand that is there and people buy from it, but you just don't like it. You don't think that it's, the brand is doing its job, but works. You know, sometimes you see this like, oh, this brand is shit, but
I actually can't think of any, because I might disagree with brands personally, but if people are buying it and it's working, it's not shit.
well, that's exactly the
You know?
answer I wanted from you.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a trap. So
Okay.
the trap was, we might think that a brand is shit,
Mm.
but if there's the line outside their shop and they're buying their products,
It's not shit.
it's not shit.
It's not shit at all.
Might not like it,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that it is shit.
Mm.
So
I actually have an example on that. I don't know if you're familiar with the Perth streetwear brand StreetX.
yeah,
Yeah. So StreetX is quite divisive, but I think he is a phenomenal brand strategist and marketer and general advertiser, and like pisses a lot of people off, but is exceptionally good at what he's doing. And to see a local Perth streetwear brand go international, you know what I mean, and sell out in America and things like that, that's virtually unheard of. And I think that's a great example. A lot of people look at that brand and they don't get it. They think it's overhyped or too expensive or gimmicky and childish or whatever it is, but
still,
it's brilliant. Like, it is brilliant. And if you disagree with it, that's probably what he was going for. You know what I mean? Like,
you get kind of that brand too. People disagree with you a lot.
yeah, I think
People
so.
don't like you, but it's
No,
okay.
they don't, but it's okay.
I'm very simple. I'm nice people, but that's okay.
It's all good.
That's fine, guys.
Yeah.
Love us for what we are. Now, just wanted to wrap up this and try to make it like trying to introduce people to brand. So is that first of all, what is a good book they can read to get started that is not too complex?
I only think you should read a couple. I think there's too many books on too many topics. Just read How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp.
Amazing book, guys.
Then read part 2 with Jenny Romaniuk. Try and get through
that book, that How Brands Grow might sound complicated at the start because Byron Sharp does
you reckon it sounds complicated?
No, I think once you start reading it, you get into it. But it just goes like it talks about, it makes an example about like brands like Colgate. You know what I mean? Market penetration of these brands and
true, that opening section.
So it's just could sound heavy, but I think once you start going into it, you get to understand, and you probably need to understand. Okay, well, he's talking about big things, but
there are lessons for small things.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Then How Brands Grow part 2. What else?
System 1's The Long and the Short of It by Peter Field and Les Binet is a bit dry, but there are a lot of really, really good evidence-based points in there if you want to really strengthen that base of understanding. And then the other one would actually be anything written by Mark Ritson. So LinkedIn posts, his columns on Marketing Week, and now The Drum. I would definitely say there, or even the Mini MBA website where they share a lot of blogs that are based on webinars and lectures that Mark has run. I would keep it really succinct, and I'm obviously incredibly biased, but I try and keep my subscription quite narrow. I think a lot of people have an opinion that maybe they haven't earned, and I try to keep who I really rely on and draw from and reference to quite a small pool. I think you should read anything and everything you can get your hands on, and absolutely as much as possible. Think critically about all of it, but when it comes to learning about brand management and building a base of understanding and a knowledge from which to work with, I would keep it narrow. Like Ritson and Sharp, Field and Binet, Romaniuk, particularly when it comes to the visual side of things, and just kind of stay there. Learn that first, read those books, know them, and then go out and seek more and compare. Maybe you subscribe to someone else better, like Simon Sinek. Disagree completely with everything he says, but that's right.
Last question for you. Where should people start?
The safe answer is understand the category. Start by understanding what category you operate in, who the people are, and how they make decisions. And then the slightly more interesting one is probably then, because people always want to skip to the fun bit, is look at your positioning. What position do you occupy in that category? How are you different from your competitors? And then what are your brand assets? What is it that makes you you? Dilate is people, black t-shirts, green logo, white word. You know what I mean? So what is it that makes you you? And what is your position in the market? And those are kind of the interesting sides of it.
It's all for us. Thank you so much, John. Super interesting to talk to you every time. Hopefully we get another chat very soon. Thanks, guys. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere it is, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere. And looking forward to the next chat. Thank you very much.